Yusei Kikuchi had a great rebound start on Wednesday night against the Cincinnati Reds, and it happened because he did two things.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Yusei Kikuchi used his experience to his advantage, and it helped him take a step forward as a starter on Wednesday. I'm going to share what he did. Kenley Jansen is hurt, but he did pitch Wednesday night, and he pitched against the A's. I'm going to share why they allowed him to pitch and get your opinion. And then during the All-Star break, Fox Sports released the all-time teams for each club, and I'm going to share why they were wrong about this Halos team. But before we get there, let's talk about our sponsor, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. You can enter for a chance to win a free dream golf trip for two. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. And there's no purchase necessary. It does exclude the Masters tournament, and it ends October 31st, 2025. Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. My name is Mike Frisch, one half of the Super Halo Bros and co-host of Locked On Angels. John's normally with me today, but he's off today, and we'll be back on Monday. We have been fans of this team for years and years and years since we were little kids, and this is our fourth season hosting Locked On Angels, and we're here every weekday to talk Angels baseball with you, so you can check us out wherever you listen to podcasts, whether you're watching or listening. Get into the conversation by finding today's show on YouTube and getting into the comments section. While you're here, hit that like and subscribe button, and you can tag us on social media or DM us at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. We'd love your thoughts on today's discussion, and you can come bowling with us. You can find out how great of a bowler John and I really are, along with our best buddy, Logan O'Hoppe. We're going to be at the Logan O'Hoppe All-Star Bowl Sunday night, September 7th from 5 to 8:30 in Fountain Valley. We're raising money to support the YMCA of Orange County. You can get your tickets by clicking the link in the episode description, and make sure you use the promo code HALOBROS when you do check out so that you can be a part of our team. And comment below and let us know if you're going to go to the Logan O'Hoppe All-Star Bowl. We'd love to see you and hang out with you on Sunday night, September 7th. So Yusei Kikuchi had a great start this week. Wednesday's start for Kikuchi against the Cincinnati Reds was a great bounce-back start for him after struggling in his last two starts. So here's those last two starts. He went 5 innings against the Tigers, which isn't bad. He did throw 102 pitches. He went 4 innings against the A's and threw 94 pitches. Remember, he had 35 foul balls in that game. They just kept making contact. Couldn't straighten it out, but kept making contact, and it was over and over and over again. In fact, Travis d'Arnaud said it was one of the more frustrating games that he caught this season because the A's were making contact, but weren't able to get hits, and then he could tell it was really having an effect on Yusei Kikuchi. But Wednesday, Kikuchi went 7 innings, and he threw 88 pitches. It was his second lowest pitch total of the season when he goes 5 innings or more. Kikuchi threw 87 pitches in 6 innings on opening day against the White Sox. That was the last time that he threw that amount of pitches and made it through at least 5 innings or more. So what was different for Yusei Kikuchi in this start? Well, he leaned on his experience. Here's how. Jeff Fletcher of the OC Register had a great article about this. You got to check it out. Subscribe. He's a great writer and really helps us to learn about our team and keeps us up to date on a lot of things. Plus, he's a great follow on Twitter. First, Yusei Kikuchi prepared for this start in a different way than he had all season long. He noticed that his pitch selection in previous starts had become really predictable. And so he spent the past few days before the start on Wednesday talking to the Halo hitters and the Halo coaches, trying to see what he needed to tweak. And what he ended up doing had a significant impact in that game on Wednesday. He decided to change the way that he was going to use his fastball. He was going to get to both sides of the plate using the fastball a bit more often. And he also made some changes to his slider. He used that pitch most often this season, throwing it at 35% of the time. But Kikuchi decided that he was going to replace most of his sliders with curveballs in Wednesday's start. In fact, he just threw 3 to 4 sliders in that game, and the rest were curveballs. And he also said that he made a simple change in the way that he threw the slider so that it had less velocity and more depth. So it did look like more of a curveball. So StatCast said he threw a lot of curveballs and less sliders, but what Kikuchi said was the same pitch. I just changed how I was holding it and how I was throwing it. Kikuchi said, I can't create another pitch. I love that. Why not? He said, so I'm going to continue to use all of my pitches in my arsenal, and I'm going to make sure that I'm locating them. I think making an adjustment in pitch usage will go a long way, and it was just becoming a little bit more predictable how he was pitching. He also said he's going to make an adjustment with the usage, and he thinks it's going to pay dividends. Now, he said that before Wednesday's start, and Wednesday's start was great. 7 innings again, just 88 pitches. The second thing that Yusei Kikuchi did was that he was going to prepare for this start by talking to the team's hitters and the hitting coaches. He said, obviously, it's been a while since I've hit, and I was never really good at it myself. Remember the times where National League pitchers would hit and there was no DH? Some traditionalists are like, yes, amen, let's bring it back. But Kikuchi was talking about those times when he was hitting. And he said, so it was good for him to get information from the hitters on what their thought process is when they're in the box, especially against him. He said, I wanted to get their opinion as to how they would approach me potentially. And he took all that info and he decided that he was going to change his approach, his pitch usage, and how he was going to throw the slider. And friends, everydayers, it worked. Travis d'Arnaud said that Kikuchi was able to command both sides of the plate on Wednesday night with these changes. He said he believes the hitters were getting really comfortable against Kikuchi because he was strong on one side of the plate, but he was really weak on the other side of the plate. And according to the stats, it seemed like he was really strong on the outer edges away from the hitter. So for a lefty, it was on the right side, and for a righty, it was on the left side. And what batters were doing was they were laying off those pitches that were inside to them, that were coming in close, because they knew that a lot of his dominant stuff would fall off outside. It would fall off the plate. Anything inside, they knew they could lay off because it was either not going to be a strike. And if it was a strike, it wasn't going to be something that they could do anything with. And so d'Arnaud said he recognized that, and Kikuchi recognized that, and that's why he needed this adjustment. Now, Kikuchi's strikeout rate this season has declined from 32% to 24%, and his walk rate increased from 6 to 10%. We shared that on yesterday's show, and that added up to a lot of frustrations, and he felt very insufficient in what he was doing. And entering his start on Wednesday night, Kikuchi ranked 3rd in the majors in total pitches with 2,500. So he was throwing a lot of pitches, but he was only 24th in innings at 143. Of course, he went 7 on Wednesday, so now that's up to 150. Wednesday's start was really a step in the right direction. Kikuchi said, obviously, there's going to be more data, and other teams are going to adjust to me, and I need to adjust to them. So it's a continuous chess match. I just got to see how the game is going and then make adjustments in game and before the game so that I have a strategy. And I got to say, everydayers, this was awesome to hear. I love everything about this, and here's why. Because Kikuchi understood that you can't keep doing the same thing in the same way and expecting the same results, right? That's the definition of insanity. And with all the video that teams have on him, they're going to adjust, and he knows that they're going to adjust. And so he threw the Reds off their game Wednesday night because he adjusted. In fact, it felt like they had a game plan, and then Kikuchi came in, not throwing the slider as much, throwing the curve more, changing its depth and its rotation, really smart, and then using the fastball to keep them off balance with whatever hitters at the plate, because he was managing both sides of the plate. And I'd love to affirm what Barry Enright is doing with Yusei Kikuchi. I know that sometimes he can get a lot of garbage thrown at him because is he really helping these guys? But I think that when it comes to this veteran like Yusei Kikuchi, he was somebody that, according to Kikuchi, really helped him to find new ways to approach the hitters and change how he's going to throw that slider to make it feel like it's more of a curve and maybe change its depth. But there is one more thing that I think is important to acknowledge in this conversation from this article from Jeff Fletcher, and that is this. Yusei Kikuchi is a veteran who has experience, and he used his experience to his advantage. And that's what this team, these Angels, that's what they need. Experience is pointless if it's not used correctly. In fact, evaluated experience is what changes things. Just because you went through something doesn't mean that you now know how to get through something, right? You have to evaluate it and learn from whatever it is that you've walked through. And Yusei Kikuchi understood that. His veteran experience was something that he had, but he didn't just let it sit on the shelf. I love that he evaluated what he was doing this year compared to what he was doing last year. Remember, when he was traded from the Rays to the Astros, he went 5-0 and was really great with the Astros because they changed the way that he was throwing his slider. In fact, he threw it more. Teams got video on that now. Opposing hitters know that now. And so for him to use that experience on how he made the adjustment then to do it again, I found that really fascinating. And in fact, isn't it interesting that when he got traded, it was, obviously July 31st, it was August and September when he had to make that adjustment. And remember, if you go back, look at the stats. Go to baseballreference.com is one place to do that. Look at his stats for the first half with the Jays compared to what he did with the Astros. He was not great, but not bad with the Jays. But with the Astros, he was spectacular. Had an ERA under 3. You know when he made those adjustments? He made those adjustments at this time last year. So Kikuchi, again, using his experience, evaluated that experience, and made those adjustments last year and then did it again this year. And it's changed the game for him, at least in that one start on Wednesday. And I'd love for the team to begin to do this in every area. For example, when the young hitters are down late in the game, they try to get it all back in one swing. John and I have talked about that often on this show. And what they need is to be evaluated by their managers and coaches and veteran players. They also need to evaluate themselves. We see that they try to get it all back, and then nothing changes when they have that opportunity again. And so maybe perhaps things will start to change because this season is a learning season. We said last year was no expectations, right? We had some expectations this year, and perhaps this year, the some expectations will help them to be even better next year. They've gained experience. They just need to use that experience and evaluate that experience. Experience means nothing if they don't evaluate and if they don't adjust. So what Kikuchi did on Wednesday, and to prepare for that start on Wednesday, is something that this team must do if they ever want to get out of mediocrity and be a team that actually is competitive. So high five to Yusei Kikuchi for doing what we were hoping that this team would do all season long. And perhaps they'll start doing it next year if they decide to use their experience for the benefit of this team and for the benefit of themselves. And maybe next year they could actually be better than fighting for 500, but maybe fighting for a playoff spot. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, Kenley Jansen pitched while he was hurt. I'm going to share why, and I'm going to ask this question. Was it the right move? I'm not sure that it was. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Time to fuel up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Flavors like grape, ginger, lime are some of the favorites of our everydayers. And whether you're out on the golf course or just need a little extra push to get through the day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the flavor you love and gives you the energy you need. And golfers, you know that golf is about good times with good people and good flavors, just like the grape, ginger, lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. You can buy, snap, and infuse your drink in a heartbeat, in instant. It's good. You should check it out. And when you do, get this, you're going to have a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the United States. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. It does exclude the Masters tournament, and it ends October 31st, 2025. This is the Locked On Podcast Network, and this is Locked On Angels. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. My name is Mike Frisch, one half of the Super Halo Bros and co-host of Locked On Angels. John is not with me today. He'll be back on Monday. Looking forward to that. Let's talk about Kenley Jansen for a moment. We got a report on Wednesday, before Wednesday's game, that Kenley was dealing with a left rib cage issue. He hurt it in the weight room, and he wasn't going to be available in the game on Wednesday. Then later, we heard that the rib issue was affecting him not just against the Reds, but also when he was pitching against the A's. So my question is, if they knew that he was dealing with some uncomfortable ribs, some rib irritation — I love when they throw irritation after everything because they're not sure what it is, right? When the when he was dealing with this rib irritation, why did he pitch at all? Well, Kenley answered that question. He said, because that's who I am. He said he struggled in both of those appearances, and he realized that it was the rib that was kind of bothering him. But the reason why he was out there, according to Kenley Jansen, is he said, I care about my teammates. I don't want to put my teammates in positions to come in with the bases loaded. He had to in the last couple of games. And he said, I feel like I'm still dealing with the pain, and I feel like I can still get the job done. But the worst thing is I didn't get the job done in that game, especially on Tuesday when the Angels were playing the Reds. He said, I'm not going to blame myself or blame the injuries. I just didn't get the job done. I lost the game, and we're going to treat this part of it, and we're going to be back out there again. Jansen said he was still pretty sore and wasn't going to be available to pitch on Wednesday night. And we saw that. We saw Luis Garcia come in and close the game for the Angels. He said the Angels are reevaluating him today, so we should get word. As of this recording, we haven't, but should get word on Kenley Jansen. All expectations are that he's not going to go to the injured list, and Kenley said that as well. He, in fact, said, I'm going to fight that. I'm going to try to get as much treatment as I can, and we're going to see how it goes. Now, Ray Montgomery, the Angels manager, said that there are times when a manager has to take the decision out of the player's hands, and that's when he doesn't think that the player is physically able to perform. And in this case, according to Ray, it didn't rise to that level. He said it was the right decision because Kenley wanted to be out there. Now, here's one thing that I've noticed, speaking of injuries, when it comes to the Angels this year. This team has been more healthy than not healthy. I know that there's been issues with Moncada and obviously Trout and some other players being in and out of there, but overall, they've been more healthy than not healthy. And honestly, I think that's one of the reasons why they've had moderate success this season, not great success, but they've had all of their players play most of the games that they've been able to play during the Ohtani years and the Trout years. We all know that if those two stayed on the field, gosh, this team probably would have been a whole lot better. Would they have been a playoff team? That's still up for debate, but maybe even with Rendon out there, they probably would have been a playoff team back in the day. Now, I know that those days have passed, but I think the injuries are one of the major factors as to why the Halos have not had success in the last few years. And the lack of injuries this year, I think, has played into the fact that they've been able to be kind of competitive and battling for 500 instead of being way, way behind. And so this moment with Kenley Jansen and his injury brings up an interesting, I think, discussion. He didn't want to leave his teammates to fight alone. I wonder if other players have kind of felt that way too, and why they haven't missed games, even though they might have been really sore. He said he wanted to be out there even at 80% and try and get the win. Right or wrong, I really appreciate the fight and the grit, but here's where I push back. I think this decision felt like the Angels, it's like the epitome of the Angels. It lacked the long-term perspective that the Angels just have not shown. I mean, if the Angels are in this thing and they're battling for a playoff spot, I get why he goes out there. Even if it's not the best move, I think he still at 80% is the best option. But you and I both know that they're not in this thing. And so that's why you don't put him back out there. In fact, this is why you traded for some veterans, right? Like they got Chafin, they got Garcia, and those guys are supposed to fill the gaps when Kenley can't go. Now, I know that Garcia did that on Wednesday, and that's why you went and got him. And that's why you went and got Chafin. Now, we could debate on if those were the best moves. We don't think so, right? We know that those weren't the best moves. However, we had the guys replace Kenley Jansen so that he could not pitch on Wednesday and heal up a bit. But here's the truth. Like, sending him back out there is for a team, in my opinion, that is competitive, that's battling for a playoff spot, not this team. It felt really short-sighted to me. And I'm curious, everydayers, if you thought so. I felt like it was really short-sighted. Here's why I believe that. I believe Kenley Jansen is going to be back next season, and I believe that for two reasons. One, because he's good. We haven't had a good closer in years. I know that we've had some meh closers and maybe almost good closers like Carlos Estevez, but I really love Kenley Jansen at the back of this bullpen. And the reason why I love him there and the reason why I believe he's good is because he's in control when he's out there every time he takes the mound. You know that he's in charge. He's driving the truck. He's pushing the buttons. He's pulling the levers, right? Let's go back to that Dodgers series the first time we swept them. Shohei Ohtani, second base, ninth inning, right? He boxed him over to third because he doesn't want Shohei to give the signals to let the hitter know where the catcher's lining up. He doesn't want Shohei to do any of that. So he sends him over to third base. That was a funny moment that you typically wouldn't see in baseball, maybe with any other closer, but Kenley Jansen wanted that to happen because he was in control on the mound. And so I love having him out there. Plus, guys like this are guys that you need on your team. And the reason why I believe that he's going to be back next year is because some of the back end bullpen guys that the Halos have that are younger are coming off of injuries. And we don't know what they're going to be able to bring next season. Robert Stevenson is rehabbing, feeling good, by the way. That was the last update we received. But we also know Ben Joyce has been out, and he's going to have to build back up, and he'll have the offseason and possibly spring training to do that. But who knows what role he'll play in 2026. And so that's why I think Kenley Jansen comes back. Second reason why I believe Kenley Jansen comes back is because he's a culture builder. I just talked about that moment with Shohei Ohtani. That's a culture building moment, right? You're a young player. You're in awe of him just controlling the situation. But also, dude, this guy, so calm and so cool on the mound. And not cool like, wow, he's cool, but cool like nothing phases this guy. He's just in control. And he's calm. There's a peace about him on the mound. And I think he's already set the standard for the rest of the bullpen. And I love that he's willing to share all the things that he's learning or has learned. And he's willing to pass that along to the players that are young, that are developing. Remember the conversation that was caught on TV between Zephyr John and Jansen? They were talking. Jansen wasn't pitching that night, and Zephyr John was up by the gate in the dugout, and they were talking. And he said later, Zephyr John said later, they were talking about the cutter and how to throw it. And by the way, maybe that's why Zephyr John threw the cutter a whole lot more often in his last few outings because of what he learned from Kenley Jansen. Now, John and I have pushed back and said, dude, throw that four-seam fastball because it's 99 to 100. That knocks them off the plate, and then you can use the cutter to get them off balance along with some of your off-speed stuff. But that's a whole nother segment, right? But I love that Kenley Jansen is passing along information, the good stuff, to the young guys. And that's one reason why you pay these veterans to come in. You want them to perform, but you also want them to pass along their knowledge. I said two reasons, but let me add a third. And I just mentioned it. I think Kenley comes back because he's performing. I mean, how many veterans has this Halo club signed and they weren't performing? They're not putting up numbers. Kenley Jansen's doing that. Yeah, we get people so that they can pass along their knowledge and they can help other players grow and develop. And I love that. I do. But I also love when they can pass along how to perform on the field. They can pass along, here's what you do even when you're an old veteran that maybe people thought you were kind of washed, right? I think Kenley comes back because of those things, because he's good and he'll be a force for culture, which is why I don't think that we need to risk his body for a win in August that makes us, 6 games under 500? I thought that was not a smart move. I get that Ray Montgomery is talking to a veteran and Kenley's like, I'm out there. I'm going to go out there. So maybe I give him a pass on that. But it just doesn't feel good when he's not feeling good and you're sending him out there. I think it can make matters a whole lot worse. What about you? Would love to hear from you in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're not, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. Would you have had Kenley Jansen pitch in that game Wednesday night, knowing that he's about 80% and not fully healthy? The MLB on Fox released their all-time players team for each team at the All-Star break. And I saw it, and I've been hanging on to it. And I felt like we're going to use this. We're going to have this conversation because it was important. So because I'm hosting today and John isn't with me, again, he'll be back on Monday, I thought now's the perfect time to have this conversation because I thought that what they posted was wrong. So let me give you some context first. They posted the all-time lineups for a bunch of baseball teams, a bunch of major league teams. They had the Reds and the Yanks and the Giants and all of those teams, right? So they had the Angels all-time lineup. So they had who should be in each spot, left field, center field, right field, the infield. They even had the DH and who the manager would be. So here's the Angels all-time lineup according to Fox, MLB on Fox. You ready for this? Garrett Anderson in left field, Mike Trout in center, Tim Salmon in right, Troy Gloss at third, Eric Ibar at short, Howie Kendrick at second, Rod Carew at first, Benji Molina at catcher. For their closer, Troy Percival. For their DH, Shohei Ohtani. And for their manager, Mike Scioscia. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And if you disagree, who would you take out? There are some players that I disagree with. Like, for example, I loved Eric Ibar, international free agent that the Angels signed. Great shortstop, was impactful. I loved the year that he hit 300 and knocked in, I think it was 60 to 70 RBIs. Like this, I loved Eric Ibar. Plus, just a spitfire out there, right? Like full of grit, full of excitement. He was somebody that wasn't a hole in the lineup. I mean, I think I actually, we really haven't had too many great shortstops after Ibar. We've had Andrelton Simmons and now Zach Neto, but anybody in between, it hasn't been great. So I've loved that we've been able to bring back some of the Eric Ibar flavor in Zach Neto. But honestly, Angel fans, shortstop, doesn't it have to be Jim Fregosi? All time, Eric Ibar doesn't beat Jim Fregosi. Now, maybe because Ibar played most of his career with the Angels and Fregosi perhaps bounced around, and that's why they took him off, and then he managed somewhere else. I'm not really sure, but I got to say that at shortstop, my guy is Jim Fregosi and not Eric Ibar. Now, how about second base? Howie Kendrick. I love Howie. Big fan of Howie. He was also the king of padding stats, wasn't he? They're down 10-1. He'd hit like a solo home run, or they're up 14-1, and he'd hit like another solo home run or a 2-run home run to make it 16-1. It felt like Howie always came through when it wasn't necessary. And then, of course, in 2019, he wins the World Series with Washington Nationals and was Mr. Clutch that year. But they have him at second base. Wouldn't you go with Bobby Grich instead? I think I'm playing Bobby Grich as the all-time second baseman for the Halos. Now, let's go over to first base for a minute. I get why they put Rod Carew there. Got his 3,000th hit with the Angels. But if we're going to talk about somebody who's been with the Angels from start to finish, I think I'm going to go with Darren Erstad at first base. I know he played outfield a bit, so maybe that's why they didn't put him at first base. But he's not even on this list. And Darren Erstad is somebody that if he's not on this team, the Angels don't win the World Series in 2002, right? He was incredible. Remember the year he hit 355, had 20 home runs as the leadoff guy? That was incredible. And so Darren Erstad being able to be kind of a tool in the tool belt, you can play him anywhere, and he was good, and he was consistent, and he could lead off. Man, I loved that guy. So I think I would debate on if Rod Carew would be in my all-time lineup. I think I would put Darren Erstad there. Now, here's the one that breaks my heart, but I'm going to explain it in a minute. In right field, I'm going to put Vlad instead of Tim Salmon. The reason is because Vlad was a much better defensive outfielder. Tim Salmon was great, but Vlad was a bit stronger out there, although later in his career, he had bad knees. And I'm going to move Tim Salmon to DH. Here's why. Because he won a World Series. He won a World Series for this team. Like, I love Tim Salmon. He's my favorite Angel of all time. Now, you might push back and say, well, what about Shohei? Well, Shohei put up some good numbers, but we didn't do anything with Shohei on this team. So I'm also thinking through the lens of like, did the Angels win with this person at that position? That's what I'm thinking. And then when it comes to like manager, I'm in on Mike Scioscia. In fact, let's just bring it back, right? Let's just bring it back. Now, they didn't have a starting pitcher here. And so I think if I was going to pick a starting pitcher, I'm going to go with Nolan Ryan. And if we wanted to have somebody who pitched most of their career with the Angels, then maybe Chuck Finley. I think I'm going with that. So who are you going with? Again, let me remind you of who Fox Sports MLB went with. Garrett Anderson in left, Trout in center, Salmon in right, Gloss at third, Ibar at short, Howie at second, Rod Carew at first, Benji Molina at catcher. Troy's going to be the closer, and Shohei Ohtani is going to be the DH. Mike Scioscia is going to be the manager. Who would you have on the mound? Nolan Ryan? Chuck Finley? Do you agree with me? Am I nuts? Who's your all-time favorite team? I'd love for you to share that in the comments below. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Angels on YouTube so you don't miss all of this great Halo content, including the best postcast in the biz with Gavin Carlson. He's live after every game right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Angels and connect with John and I on Twitter and Instagram at Super Halo Bros. And we'd love to hear from you. Love to hear your thoughts, especially if you're coming to the Logan Hoppy Bowl. We would love to know if you're coming so that we can look for you and hang out together. Maybe you could show us a thing or two, or we could maybe show you a thing or two. That's not going to happen because we're not great at bowling, but we're just looking for the good hang with our good buddy, Logan O'Hoppy. He will come by. We'll get some photos. It's going to be a really fantastic time. Can't wait to see you. So make sure that you click the link in the episode description to come and hang out with us at the O'Hoppy Bowl and use Halo Bros when you do check out. Coming up on Monday on Locked On Angels, we're going to tell you about all the things you need to know from the Cubs series. Cubs are coming in. They're good. So does that mean that the Angels play up to the Cubs? I guess the answer is we'll find out on Monday. Until then, my name is Mike Frisch, one half of the Super Halo Bros and co-host of Locked On Angels. Can't wait to see you on Monday. Enjoy the weekend and go Angels.